Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Babylock. Babylock is so excited to introduce the launch of 5 new sewing, quilting, and embroidery machines: the Chorus, Ballad, Array, Vesta, and Flare. These new machines come with a variety of innovative features and accessories, so you can prep less and sew more. Features include wireless connectivity to easily transfer designs from your computer to machine, a guide beam to help you stitch straight lines, an automatic needle threader that threads your needle with little more than the push of a button, and plenty of sewing space for your large quilting, sewing, and embroidery projects. To check out these new machines, visit babylock.com.
Hello, and welcome to Sewing with Threads, the monthly podcast by the staff of Threads Magazine. I'm your host, editorial director Sarah McFarland, and I'm joined by our senior technical editor, Carol Frasia. Hi, Carol.
Hello. Hi.
And our guest this episode is Emily Hallman. Hi, Emily.
Hey, you guys.
Emily is a designer and stylist, and she documents her sewing adventures on emilyhallman.com. She's well known for her use of color and creating cohesive, inspiring collections. She's a lifelong fashion and style enthusiast and is always immersed in a creative project that typically involves beautiful fabric. She holds a degree in apparel design and product development from Baylor University and lives in Central Texas with her husband. Well, welcome, Emily. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you guys for having me. I'm thrilled to be here.
You're a new guest for us, and we always ask our new guests 5 sewing-related questions.
All right, fire away.
How did you learn to sew?
I sort of taught myself. I remember the first time that I went to Joann with my mom many years ago. She explained how the patterns worked, looking through the pattern catalog and then digging through the drawer to find your pattern, and just sort of explained like how you buy fabric. But she wasn't a seamstress and didn't sew a lot. Neither did my grandmother. So I just sort of figured it out. Got a very simple pattern, got a little bit of fabric. My parents actually got me a sewing machine when I was about 14, and I dabbled with it off and on for a few years, and really got into it a little more in my late teens. Then I thought it would be a good idea to go to college for physical therapy. And I don't know what I was thinking there. So quickly changed majors after about a year to apparel design and product development, which is just a fancy way of saying fashion design. And really thought that was a better suited for me. So then in college, that's where I got, my technical formal training in construction. So a little self-taught, and then really got into it in college.
What are you currently sewing?
All of the summer dresses, all of them. Lightweight. I mean, I live in Texas, so it gets so hot here in the summer. And every time summer rolls around, I go, Emily, where are all your weather appropriate dresses? And so spending a lot of time with some linen and some lightweight poplin, and just making some fun sundresses this season.
Which fabric do you enjoy sewing the most?
I like to separate this into 2 because I have a favorite fabric, but it's not my favorite fabric to work with. My favorite fabric is silk gazar because it is so unique and it is just so beautiful. I love the natural volume. I love the luster that it has, the beautiful movement, but it's a nightmare to work with. And it's also just one of those specialty fabrics that you don't really need a lot of in your closet. My favorites to work with would be poplin and linen. I have heard many a guest on your podcast talk about their love for wool. And I absolutely appreciate that and love wool as well, but it's just not a fabric that's really practical for where I live, so I don't use it a lot. Poplin, however, fantastic. Linen, great. So really, really love working with those 2 for sure.
Which sewing word or term is your favorite?
I don't know if I can narrow it down. Probably anything that has to do with quality construction. So if you were to say French seam or Hong Kong finish, or understitching. That I would love that. I also love press. It's very basic, but it's so important. And I have used it, ever since I was in college. And I can't remember the last time that I said, "Oh, I have to go iron a dress." I don't even swap it out. When I'm just ironing something to wear it, I have to press my dress. So press is another one.
That's funny. I've started to do that too. Use
Hmm.
press all the time.
Hmm.
Please share what you love best about sewing.
So many things. It's the creative process. I love using the skills that I have um, towards something that I think is so rewarding and so fun, and really is a reflection of my personality. There's such a beauty in individuality, and sewing our own clothes gets us, that individuality. So that, and also just the satisfaction of having an idea, taking a piece of cloth, cutting it up into a million pieces, putting it all back together, and you've got something beautiful. The satisfaction of that has never waned for me over the years.
Emily, thank you for answering the 5 questions.
My pleasure.
Emily, for anyone listening who isn't familiar with your blog or your work, could you tell us about what it's like and what you like to write about?
I like to write about the things that I make. So a typical post will be on that topic, what I made and why I made it. There's a big, I really try to be careful with the projects that I choose. And of course, over the years, I've made things that I didn't need, or, that were just like, oh, on a whim, wanted to make something. But I really try to be careful about the things that I choose to make, because we all know the time investment involved in sewing something. And while that's an enjoyable part of it, it's a time investment. So, I just want to be careful with that. So the why, behind my projects. It has to do with time, and it has to do with a lot of other factors, but I really like to explain, why I've chosen to make something. So I'm showing it to the world, and I'm telling you why I did it.
I think something that really struck me as a reader about your blog is how beautifully curated it is. It, as you said, it takes a lot of time. It takes an investment to sew.
Mhm.
And when I see the groupings that you've created, the silhouettes that work for you, it inspires me to be a little more disciplined in my sewing.
Mhm.
And I think that that's a great offering to bring to an audience.
Mhm.
So
I
we have a
agree.
lot of
Yeah.
questions about how you plan.
Oh, I can't wait. Bring it on.
Yeah.
Bring it on.
I was just going to say the idea of being so intentional in what you make. I think a lot of people do just dive in and say that dress looks good or that skirt is cute, and then you make it and you wind up with the same wardrobe orphans that you would have if you bought it. It just used up your time instead of your money, or some money also. And there's something very aspirational about looking at somebody who's managed to find the way to make a wardrobe that's really interesting and very personal, but not a lot of wasted time.
Mhm. Mhm. Well, to kind of give some context around why I do that, I have to take it back a few years. A couple of years after I graduated from college, I started my own business. And so for 5 years, I had my own, it was just a small line of women's clothing and accessories, but I did that for 5 years. I also did custom bridal, other custom design, alterations. I did pretty much everything. And so realized that, a life of entrepreneurship wasn't for me. And that's okay. I was perfectly happy to say, you know what, this was a great 5 years. I loved this experience and took a lot away, took goodness from it. But after that, I realized I had nothing in my closet for me. I had devoted all of my time and energy into this business, and completely neglected my own closet. So the blog was kind of born out of, this will be a great creative outlet for me. I have no clothes, but I have the skills to make them. Why don't I just do that and figure out, what's next in my journey? And so that's why I started the blog. I had no goals with it. I had no idea that, it would take off or really become anything. It was really just, it'll be fun to make a dress and then, put it on the blog and kind of share it. Because I also knew that I had a lot of knowledge in the area that I could share along the way and thought that might be helpful for someone. And when I first started, it didn't take me very long to get on the kind of sewing in collections thing that I do on that path. I think I made a tulle skirt, shortly after I started the blog and a couple of other just random things. And then I thought, well, wait a minute, that's really not how my brain works and not really what I was trained to do. What I was trained to do, was create these collections, design a line to sell. And so while I'm not selling the clothes that I'm making anymore, I still approach it that way. So I'm thinking in terms of a great pair of pants and a couple of tops to go with it, a dress, a light jacket, depending on the season, I'm thinking that way. So my collections now, after having done this for a few years, aren't quite as, there's not quite the variety there anymore because I've checked off so many things. The linen pants a couple of years ago, or the jacket, or I love a good blouse, so I've made plenty of those. But that's really the idea, is to think about it in terms of things that work together. So there's a capsule wardrobe element to it, but it's not intended to be that. I love the idea of a capsule wardrobe, but for me, who just absolutely adores fashion and all the colors, and having options that inspire me and that I feel good in does feel a little bit limiting. So it may look like a capsule when you look at each collection individually, but the idea is that they all come together, in the end. And the navy blue pants that I made, a couple of years ago, of course, I still wear them with, other things that I've made in different collections. So that was a very long-winded answer to that question. But yeah, I mean, it started very just, very as a creative outlet ultimately.
I've noticed that the silhouette styles you wear on your blog and you sew, they're very flattering to you. Was that a process? Was that a journey to find the shapes that were really good for you? Or did you already have a pretty good idea based on your fashion background?
I had a pretty good idea. I figured out early on that I have an hourglass silhouette. And so that's why a lot of my things have a belt or, cinch in at the waist because that's just flattering on my body. I remember shortly before I went to college, really gravitating towards the 40s and 50s silhouettes, and that particular style. For me, and I'm still influenced by that, but for me, I need a modern twist on it. It needs to look like it belongs in 2021 to me. And so but immediately recognized that I loved that feminine aesthetic and just feeling really good and really elegant in my clothes. I love that. So once I identified with that and recognized what my body shape was, it was relatively easy for me to figure out, what looks good and what doesn't. And I don't have, luckily, too many fitting challenges. I do a sway back adjustment on nearly everything. And I'm a little bit taller. I'm 5'7", so I add a little bit of length to most everything as well. But other than that, yeah, I figured it out mostly, quite a while ago and just stuck with it. If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Along those lines, I was going to ask you, do you work with sort of tried and true patterns, or do you try new patterns each season?
Yes, and yes. Yes, I am happy to repeat a great dress. It makes no difference to me because I'm not someone who can wear a lot of different styles necessarily. And I also know what I'm just comfortable in, so I'll repeat a shirt dress pattern 3 or 4 times, but there's always a new pattern or a new trend that comes out, and I like to incorporate that as it works for me into my closet each season. So, yes, love my tried and true patterns. I will repeat anything, but love trying new stuff too.
Do you ever draft your own patterns?
So when I had my business, that's all I did. Every single one of them from scratch. And I think I got really burned out on that. And so
Okay. Yeah.
I love commercial patterns because it saves me the trouble of doing it myself. So I don't draft many things completely from scratch for myself much anymore. I modify, and I know how to really, really modify a commercial pattern and switch them out. I know, I can mix and match the pieces, but not too much drafting completely from scratch anymore. Nope.
Emily, how much are you influenced by what current ready to wear trends? Do you go out and look around a little bit and think, I like that, I want to try something like that? Or do you just sort of absorb it as you go by and, maybe pay a little attention?
A little bit of both. Um, Fashion forecasting, was part of my major in college. And so we, really got to understand the importance of streetwear, and window shopping, looking at Europe for trends before they come over here. So I like to stay on top of that and know what's out there. Um, so yes, but in terms of what I make for myself, I'm actually not sure if a lot of that influences it because I just really know what I like. Um, I'm sure it makes its way in a little bit, but I kind of know what I like and I just run with it.
Okay, as a follow-up, can I ask you, as somebody with training in this, what streetwear means? We've talked about this in the office, and this is going a little bit off topic, but streetwear, when I see it on something like Project Runway or one of the other shows, it's always a very athleisure and very casual and everything, but I don't know if that's what streetwear really means in the fashion world.
So streetwear is really what's happening on the streets. It may not be a trend yet. It may not be something that we're seeing on the runway. It may not be something that we're seeing in Vogue. And it can be local to different areas. Streetwear is going to look different in Paris than it would in Nashville. So there's that. It's just really interesting to walk around wherever you are and see what people are wearing. It can make its way up from streetwear. But yes, I would also say that it's a lot of just very casual, athleisure, um, you know, everyday stuff. Yeah.
So is it more a styling thing than an actual specific garment type?
Yes, it can be. It's an aesthetic, I would think. Um, it can reflect what the current trends are, but usually streetwear can be an indication of things to come. So that's why we're, kind of seeing what's going on around the world on the streets, what real everyday people are wearing.
Is it tied to any particular age group? I always think of it as young trends, as very youthful trends.
I think I would agree with that. Yeah. What are the kids out there? What are the kids doing? Yeah. I would agree with that. But fashion is ageless.
Oh,
You can see trends and all sorts of things on anyone.
Emily, the collections you create also have very beautiful colors in them. And just
Mm.
speaking about forecasting, where do you look for color trends? Um, where do you find inspiration?
I definitely pay attention to Pantone and the color that they announce every year, or colors, as being the ones that they think are going to be big. And I'm watching the runways as well. And also, it's happened a couple of times coincidentally that I have worked with a color, and then the next season or even the following season, it's all over the runway. Last year, one of my favorite colors to work with, and I did tons of things with it, was orange. It just felt very optimistic to me, and orange, depending on the shade, reflects so nicely off of your skin. It's a lot more flattering than I think people think. But anyway, I loved it and I did so much with it. And then I saw it on the runways the following season, and I'm seeing it sprinkled throughout this year as well. So that was funny to see. Mostly I'm following my own instinct. I'll find a fabric that I just absolutely love, and then the wheels start turning, and then we're going down that road. So that's really what happened with orange. The year before, I did a lot with powder blue and yellow because that's a lovely combination that I just really liked. Colors that work for me, I stick with those pretty well. Um, yeah, just things that I like. I always go back to navy blue. That is probably my favorite neutral color. So I always do a lot with navy blue, but a lot of it's just instinct and, fabric, being inspired by that and finding something that I love and just taking off with it.
Do you have a large fabric stash? Or do you? I wondered how you, whether it was fabric or pattern first.
Oh, fabric,
Fabric. Oh,
100% fabric. Yes, I probably do have a healthy stash, because I will allow myself to buy something when I see it, even if I don't have a plan for it, because I would hate to have the idea later on and go, oh man, well, I didn't get that fabric when I had the chance. So, and y'all know how a fabric can call out to you and you just have no choice in the matter. So you have to have it in your collection. So yeah, I always pick things up here and there. If I'm traveling anywhere, I know where all the fabric stores in a lot of cities all over the world. And so always make it a point to stop there and see if there's any goodies that I have to take home with me. So yes, I do have the fabric stash, but I also, if I'm working on a grouping or a collection of something and I have an idea, then I'll search for something. Sure. So I do that too.
Well, so have you ever made any terrible fabric buying mistakes? Or is it just not time yet for those fabrics?
That is a really good question. I definitely have some things in my stash that I went, well, why did you buy this? Like, it's not even special, Emily. What's the deal? I don't even know what I was thinking there. So yeah, there's definitely some things in there, and maybe something was on sale, or who knows. But yeah, there's certainly some things in there that probably need to be weeded out.
I'm curious, how much fabric do you usually buy if you're not
Mhm.
sure what you're going to do with the fabric yet?
That is probably one of the questions I get most often. And my answer isn't necessarily straightforward because it depends on the width of the fabric, what type of fabric it is, and the cost. 4 yards is not a bad idea. If you want to get two things out of it, or you like a lot of full skirts, and I do, 4 yards is typically a safe buy. But the width of the fabric and the cost of the fabric are also considerations when
Okay.
I buy something. But I also love making more than one thing out of a fabric that I just adore. In fact, I found this Carolina Herrera stretch cotton poplin at Mood last year, and I bought, I think, 5 yards at the time. It was 45 inches wide, and I think $14 a yard. And I thought it was the most amazing bargain for Carolina Herrera fabric that I'd ever seen, and a practical fabric for my climate. Adored the print. I could go on and on about this fabric. And anyway, about 5 yards when I first saw it, and ended up calling Mood a few months later and ordered 7 more yards. And I've gotten 3 or 4 garments out of that fabric. So I am absolutely not shy about doing that either. If it's a beautiful fabric, yeah, I want to wear it in more than one way. So I'll buy a
Yes.
lot of something that I really love.
I keep using fabrics too, like down to the least little bits too.
Yes.
I mean, I'll get down to making headbands or little pouches or something to use it all up.
Yes.
How do you determine a palette from season to season? Is it more building on the colors that you're excited about, or extending the wardrobe that you've been building for some time?
Both. Especially now that I've been doing this for a while, I'll think about the things that I already have, and now it's about building that out. Having a few more options to wear with the navy blue linen pants that I think I've mentioned 3 times now. So that's a go-to garment for me. I love linen pants in the summer, so having options with that. So yes, I am thinking about the wardrobe as a whole, because otherwise, you don't want to end up with a bunch of random things, and we're all guilty of buying the random things that end up in our closet, myself included. But I didn't want to end up with a closet full of things that just kind of were, random. So I'm always thinking about outfits. But I love dresses too, and those are the easiest outfits because it's one and done and you're out the door. So I'm thinking about the wardrobe, but also the color. The color is such a huge thing, and sometimes it'll be months that I'm thinking about a color or more than one together. And sometimes after I've come off a couple of collections that are colorful, I'll go back to something neutral. So I started 2021 doing a few things that were black and like a beige color and just very, kind of a palette cleanser after. And maybe I needed that and I didn't realize it, subconsciously after the year that we had in 2020. This was kind of
Yeah.
my way of starting a new year on a clean slate, so to speak. So there's a lot of reasons, for the different colors, but a lot of thought actually goes into it. A lot.
What would
What
you say?
percentage of, oh, sorry, Carol.
You go ahead, Sarah. I think you're going to
What
ask the same question.
I was wondering if you had an idea of what percentage of your garment was or your closet was self sewn now.
Oh boy. It's probably 75-25, 75% made, 25% bought. I did have a little guilt about buying store-bought clothes when I started my blog because I thought, oh, is the goal here to make everything? And there are folks out there that do that. I have figured out that that's not for me. Again, I love fashion, I love style, and there's things out there that save me the time from having to make them that I'm perfectly okay buying. Um, I also, some of the things that I buy are like travel clothes because I don't like working with polyester a lot. It's just not, it's not, I don't love it. But I'll buy a polyester dress because it won't wrinkle in my suitcase. It's easy to travel with, and it saved me the trouble for making it. So that's really the inspiration behind buying a lot of things. Saves me the time, is good for travel, or there's a few other reasons, but most of it is made by me at this point. Yeah.
So my question was going to be, what percentage of your wardrobe is print versus solid, actually?
Ooh, I have a lot of prints. I love prints, and I've also listened to your podcast enough to know, that there is a discussion about prints and the scale of prints, and I've laughed a few times because I love a large scale print. I really do. When it's done like in a big full skirt, or a dress or something. But I love prints. That's such a great way to show your personality and have some fun. I mean, today I'm wearing solids, but and so those are definitely in my closet, but my eye always goes to the prints, always. Yeah.
Well, I
Emily,
kind of agree with you. Yeah. I mean, I feel like I have, when I look in my closet, there's a lot of print in there too. It's not always the big pieces, but there's always something there to
Yeah.
give a little life to every outfit.
Yeah.
Emily, I wanted to ask you about your day job. We
Yes.
know what it is, but could you share a little bit about it with our audience?
Yes, absolutely. So I'm a stylist, and I work for a company that offers it's sort of a subscription service, but we offer styling advice and help for people who are looking for clothes, for any number of reasons. So I get to connect with different clients, see what they're looking for in their wardrobe, or trips coming up, or what have you, and help them find the treasures that they'll love and that will come in handy in their closet. It's really fun. It's great to connect with people and help with clothes. We all wear clothes. We all need clothes for a lot of different things. Um, and I'm very, very aware of the power of clothing, and what that can do for your mood, for how you present yourself, for how you feel. Feeling is such a big part of styling my clients, but also for myself. and the things that I make. Sometimes I'm chasing that feeling of elegance or just feeling comfortable in your clothes, whatever that means for you. And so that's been a very rewarding part of that job. So yeah, and it's fashion related, and I get to see all the new trends and look at clothes all day, and yeah, it's super fun.
Do you think your knowledge of working with fabrics and handling fabrics as a home sewer influences your work as a stylist? Does it help inform it?
Without a doubt. Without a doubt, because I understand fabric. I know how it moves, I know how it wears, I know the properties of it, so I can speak to that. And not everyone knows, how polyester is going to handle itself over the course of a day, or in your suitcase, like I mentioned, or what linen is going to do, or how to care for these things. So that has just been, yeah, absolutely a huge, huge part of it. And then vice versa, I'm always thinking about new ways to wear things, and incorporating trends, again, however they work for the individual, because I really like the individual interpretation of things. A trend is great, but if everyone is doing the exact same thing, then it eats into the greatness of the trend. The beauty for me in fashion is seeing, how people look at that and in turn wear it, on themselves. I'm just endlessly fascinated by the choices that people make in what they wear, and really want to understand why. But yeah, it just so yes, yeah, it definitely the job influences what I do, and then I can bring some knowledge to the job as well. Yeah.
Do you ever have a client that is just so hard to figure out? You don't know what to tell them to wear?
Yes. Yes. Yeah, I mean, yeah, we're all different, and not everyone looks at getting dressed every day the way I do. I don't look at food the way that, a Michelin starred chef looks at food, so we all have our own things. But yeah, for the client who, and honestly doesn't know what they want, either, there's some experimentation involved in that process and really helping them figure out what looks good, but ultimately what they feel good in. I can speak to proportion and I can speak to, what looks good on certain body types, but it really comes down to what someone is comfortable in. So yes, there's always, clients here and there, and it might be a little bit more of a journey, but maybe it's a little more rewarding in the end too. So,
Emily, how do you find enough time to sew?
oh, I
Work,
wish
blogging and working a full-time job.
Yes, I wish I had more. Honestly, I wish I had more. I squeeze in, even if it's just a couple of seams over my lunch break. I've got some pockets pinned to a linen shirt dress that I'm working on right now, and so, maybe over lunch I'll get those pockets sewn down and then pressed in place, and then maybe tomorrow I'll do the buttonholes on the pocket flap, things like that. So a little bit here and there adds up. But I do love a good long weekend when I can spend a lot of hours in the studio and just cut out a couple of things at once and just kind of get going. It's like an assembly line. And so that's super fun as well. But we're all busy and we all have a lot to do, and it's just about doing what you can when you can.
Your sewing space is lovely. Did it take you a long time to get it organized like that?
Yes, we bought this house 3 years ago, I think, and it took me about 6 weeks to paint everything, and to get everything situated. I've got a wall back here that you can't see, but it's covered in wallpaper. So did all that, painted everything, and there's 6 doors in here, I think. So it took forever to. If you've ever painted, you can relate to the struggle that is, taping and cutting off, and then it just, yeah, so it took a while to get everything in its place, but I absolutely love this room, and I included some things in it that to me are playful and inspiring. I found a vintage Barbie calendar a few years ago at a local craft store, And I thought, well, this is great as a calendar, but these illustrations are magnificent. Let me just cut this up and frame these illustrations. And so now that's what you see on the wall behind me. And I just love that. This is a space where creativity happens, and it's meant to be fun and enjoyable. And it is. I love being in here.
Well, I think that the work you do is very inspiring. And I wanted to mention, we've come to the end of our time, so thank you so much for talking with us. But you have many wonderful articles and tutorials on your website about things that we've talked about. I know you talk about process of creating collections. You have some tutorials on there. And so I urge our listeners to visit emilyhallman.com. And Emily, thanks again for being on Sewing with Threads.
Thank you guys for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure. I'll come back anytime.
Thank you for listening. Follow Threads on social media and visit threadsmagazine.com to view show notes for this episode. While you're on the site, check out Threads Insider, our online membership with exclusive access to expert sewing techniques. Until next time, keep on sewing with threads.